What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Dave Gold Evolve podcast. This is a podcast where I interview industry leaders in the spiritual, dating, and business world to help men truly evolve their life. And with that being said, we've got an amazing guest, Joanna Baker, who is actually a transformational mentor to help men navigate and thrive in the modern world. And she loves the topics of healing and evolution. And it's a pleasure to have you on. Joanna, where are you based? Where are you coming from today?
I I am in Kent, in England. You're not even in the UK, are you?
No, actually, I'm not. I'm in Serbia right now, in Belgrade, Serbia. I just walked across the border yesterday from Romania to Serbia, and I had been waiting in Romania for a computer to arrive. And then when we decided that it wasn't going to arrive, I came and I got a call today saying that it arrived. So that's the world that I live in, that this is the ups and downs, the trials and tribulations of living this digital nomad lifestyle. Some people, they see the videos, they see the pictures, and they wish that they could have it, but when you're really living it, you experience how difficult it is, and it's not for everyone.
Yeah, don't you find that scary?
um I think that there's a bit of anxiety that always comes up, and then you break through it and you look back and you think, why was that anxiety there? What was that
Yeah,
fear that was holding me back, whether it's traveling to a new country or approaching a beautiful girl or starting a
yeah,
business? And I know that you were really passionate about helping guys who are going through phases of anxiety in their life. So, what have you heard from guys that contributes to the anxiety in their life?
I've come across, because I've worked in a gym-based environment with my business for probably about 4 or 5 years now, and so I'm around a lot of guys of really different, varying ages. Sort of, they can be sort of like late teens to sort of into their 50s, some into their 60s. And across the board, I think there's this massive misconception of boys in a gym loving to look in the mirror, loving this about themselves. But actually, when you really get under their skin, there's some real problems going on there. A lot of them are suffering with anxiety and stress, and they find that that's their outlet. And it's especially the ones younger that are sort of, like I say, in these late teens, sort of like mid 30s, they are just struggling to navigate through the world as it is. Um, it's funny, I was writing something for my men's group the other day,
Mm.
and I started off writing a care sheet for them, just to, like, what's your self-care? What do you do? How do you cope emotionally? And I come up with this series. Can I read it out to you, Dave?
Please
Because
do.
it's like it it was sort of one of those things that I wrote that happened,
Yeah.
and
I
it
can
was just,
really relate to this because, I've got guys in my mentorship who they do the same thing. They go to the gym to work out, to get big,
yeah,
and behind the muscles is
yeah,
childhood trauma, is
yeah,
bullying, neglect from the parents,
yeah,
not finding purpose in your life, not chasing after your dreams. And then there's just this front of, I'll go to the gym and I'll let off this steam, but inside I'm feeling broken.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've got, before I read you that, actually, I want to give you a little bit of I've got a bit of a philosophy of why I want to do this sort of work and where it actually stems from, and my experience. And I'm going to go back 30 years to when I was 14, 16. And I remember at that point in life, we was growing up in a world where women were still in that homemaker role, and there was also being pushed to have a career. So I was on the cusp of these two things, and it was like, do I go this way or do I go that way? Being the oldest out of four girls, I'd sort of helped my mum with the kids, and I went down the road of having my children very, very young. And now I look at people 30 years on, and I think and I'm going to read out this post that I wrote, because it's quite powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I was asking men, what does self-care mean to them and what it means to me? And it's just like, I stop, take a breath and allow myself to unwind. And I find all too often men don't really allow that for themselves, and they tend to keep everything really pent up, and eventually they're going to combust. And I went on to write that the world wants equality for men and women, but does a man really know how to navigate through this equal world? Do they know how to keep a balance? Do they know how to cope emotionally? As a man, you're supposed to be in touch with you're supposed to be tough with your feelings, but yet in touch with them. That's confusing in itself. How do you be this tough bloke, yet still be this empathic, emotional support for a woman or whatever relationship you may be in? Other things like you have to go to work, but be there to put the kids to bed. You both go to work, as in both partnership, like partners, and you have this power struggle of those whose job is the most important. How do you manage all these conflicting expectations? And one of my biggest things, I think it's going to create a little bit of a rift as I post this, but it's women want equal rights with men, but how does a man manage to be a man when it is just so confusing for them in this world? And it is so confusing. And I can go back to some 30 years ago thinking how confusing that was for me. Should I be a mum? Should I be a career woman? And now I feel like everything's gone back round, and there's so many men just struggling, and men's mental health is huge, just huge at the minute. And I also think this past year, where we've had the COVID and the lockdowns, men just haven't had the outlet either.
I'm gonna piggyback off that. There was a post in one of my friends' Facebook groups, and it was a guy who's shown up to our mastermind a few times and is really struggling um, with just that the balance. And so he
Yeah,
made a post, and I'm not going to name him. If you know this guy or you know the group, great. If not, you can approach me personally if you want to talk more about that. If you're listening to this podcast. But the post went like this. So there's a TV show in Sweden called Married at First Glance, and in the most recent episode, a psychologist criticized the woman for putting irreconcilable demands on the men. Roughly translated, on one hand, they want men with traditionally masculine traits
yeah,
who are secure in themselves, who are assertive, dominant, and who won't back down. But at the same time, they want men who value equality, who are adaptable, and who don't take up too much space. Those things don't go together. And he had a lot of beef with that post. He said, he thinks the psychologist is wrong and that it's an outdated view of the traditional masculine traits, which necessarily means you have to have a retrograde view on equality, be non-adaptable, and to take up a lot of space. That traditional masculinity is by definition toxic. And he said that there's no necessary conflict between the secure, assertive, dominant, and not backing down, and at the same time valuing equality, being adaptable, and not physically dominating a space. And maybe it's hard to find men who are evolved and secure enough in the masculinity to embody both of these sides, but there's absolutely no inherent conflict between them. And, I actually kind of resonated with what the psychologist said, because to me, I took it as, yeah, like guys are going to the extreme. They're either saying, I need to be this dominant alpha male and go
yeah,
pick up a lot of women and go make a lot of money, or like a people pleaser kind
yeah,
of guy, like the nice guy who he's got his job and he takes care of his girl, but she doesn't feel fully happy. And the amount of guys who just naturally get the balance is few and far between.
Yeah.
So, what do you think when you hear, the psychologists make those claims? Do you agree, disagree? What are your thoughts?
I I feel that there needs to be this equality, needs to be a balance. It needs to have the right amount of masculinity and femininity in each partner. Does that make sense? The, this is so hard to try and articulate what is exactly needed. I mean, if I was to speak like personally from myself, if I had a man that was too emotional, I wouldn't cope. Well, not that I cope with it. I'd feel like I was constantly like sort of fixing him. If I had a man that was too dominant and too manly, I'd feel quite intimidated by that. And trying to bring in these two together, I feel like women have been shown how to do this, like this power being like this, but then just, I don't know, been forgotten. They're just not, yeah, they're just not given, they're not given the same amount of support at all. It makes me quite sad, actually. It makes me quite sad. I feel like everything's gone for equality for women and men have just been left by the side.
To just
Yeah.
figure it out on their own.
Yeah, that's what they try to figure it out on their own.
And also kind of be blamed for not figuring it out or not getting it.
Exactly, yeah.
No.
Yes.
Why aren't you
But how do you know if they
communicating?
get it?
Yeah, why aren't you communicating better with your partner? Why aren't you being more dominant in the bedroom? Why aren't you leading more? Why aren't you taking control? And you know, that guy, for example, he would always bring up this point that I'm a very sexual man, but I'm scared to show it to women because I know there's a lot of feminists out there that might get turned off by it. So,
Yeah.
what do you think moving forward is going to be some good ways for men to find the balance between their masculine traits and their feminine traits so that they can show up as a whole, complete masculine figure in a relationship?
I think acceptance is one really big thing, actually, because I can find all too not a man wants to pretend or give that persona of being really, really dominant and will ignore that side of him. And I think it's an acceptance of understanding that it's okay to be like this and it's okay to be like that. And I like to do a lot of energy work as well. So you like sort of we feel into the body. I work a lot with the chakras as well, which I find really, really helpful. So you can, by working with those, you can sort of like help to sort of embrace the feminine side of you as well as the masculine side of you. And I think I really feel like it's okay to be, and it's okay to be dominant as well, but in a healthy balance. I think men need to talk. More than anything, I think they need to talk and have a safe space to talk.
Yeah, and I noticed that as
And not be
well, that
scared.
in
Not be
many
scared
men's
to talk.
communities, yeah, I noticed that in many men's communities, it wasn't a safe space to open up about your insecurities. A lot of the time, guys would just be shamed because of it. And if they
Yeah,
weren't making enough money or sleeping with enough women, then they weren't doing enough. They weren't hustling hard enough. They weren't
yeah,
executing on the system or the tactics or the tricks, rather than just, you know, accepting the fact that, well, maybe for some guys it'll take a little bit longer. Maybe for some guys they haven't fully gotten to that place where they feel ready, where they feel confident to go out and meet a woman in the
yeah.
day.
I think you need to
Yeah.
go inside. Yeah, I feel like they need to go inside and actually accept and see who they really are, rather than try and live up to like maybe their peers or society or family, and really, really get inside who they are and know it's safe to actually be the person they want to be, that they're really in touch with, that they haven't got to be this person that's been, you know, like you're like fun with family dynamics and that, you know, you get a lot of pressure. I'll tell you where I do get a lot of pressure, and I do find a lot of problems is actually in the Asian community. And I have a lot of men there I work with that they've got the biggest problem I find with them, a lot of them have been born in a Western world, but the Asian values are coming down with them, and they are having a real power struggle over this, where they want to be sort of like this more in tune person, in touch with their self, in touch with their feelings, and with their choices, but they're too frightened to be like that because of the pressure from sort of parents and things. It's a really, I think it's a really, really difficult and confusing world.
And what's the process that you take men on to start to become aligned with their true self and feel into their body?
It's a lot of reflective work, so and archetypal work as well, because sometimes you need to get them in a role that maybe they don't feel like themselves, that they can actually play a part to really open up.
You want to
So
talk
they
about
can
that
sort
for a
of,
second, about the archetypes?
yeah, there's many ways that can be looked at. Sorry, my dog's just come in to disturb me. Yeah, there's some really good books I've read, and I can't remember the author. The Hero Within is the name of the book, and that's brilliant. And that works through different archetypes of man, not just man and women as well. But it's sort of like you can start to fit. Well, yeah, that's my persona, but I've got a bit of that persona, and I've got a bit of that persona, but I'd actually like a bit of that one. How can I bring all of those into balance? It's quite a fascinating thing to sort of do. Then the other thing we do with sort of archetypes, so for example, say you've got a situation you need to deal with, and you don't know how to work through it. So we can get into your current role as you feel. Then we might pick like an emotion, say like you're going to speak from a happy place. So you come and step into this version of you, and then you tackle and give your approach on the situation from this space. Then we might move into a colour, for example. There's so many ways you can do this. You could say pick the colour blue, and then you'd actually tackle that from being the colour blue. And it all sounds, it's very, very clever how it works. Very clever. It's a bit of like transpersonal coaching. So you've worked from different roles with this issue, then you come back out into your normal role and you look at it and you think, right, which was the best way for me to deal with it? So then when you've got that issue, every time you've got to deal with that issue, maybe you've got to step into that role. So you step into your colour blue and you be that person to deal with that. There are so many different archetypal ways you can go through things. It's fascinating. I think men also like that as well, because when you do work with the archetype stuff as well, we can work with the hero, you can work with the, I'm trying to think what they all are now, you've got the wanderer, there's loads, and there's some of the roles that they sound quite masculine as well, so I think that's quite useful for men to sort of to use those, but they bring you sort of in touch with different sides of yourself.
So are you saying that there's more than just 4 archetypes? I think it was hero, a warrior, lover, magician, and there was one artist maybe, or the mystic.
Yes, there's like, there's have you not read the books though? They're brilliant. I can't think, she's got 12 archetypes. I'm sure it's 12. It's really, yeah.
Have you seen a pattern with the guys that you work with, that they're falling in line with a certain archetype, or one that gives them trouble to overcome anxiety?
It's one or the other. There's no in between. It is like that warrior, the really dominant person,
Hmm.
or it's I don't know if calling them the lover is the right one. If I was to put it, if you was to look at it from a societal point of view, I would say that you've got one that looks dominant, one that looks weak,
Hmm.
yeah, and one that might look exciting, and the other one looks stable but boring. Yeah, so no one or no one I've worked with or come across can bring everything together and find and like merge everything together.
What do you think is the biggest eye-opening mm, breakthrough that you've experienced yourself from working with men?
Um, what with any man in particular?
No, about you.
Oh, about me.
Breakthrough have you had from working with men? Have you learned anything about you?
Oh gosh. Um, yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. So if I reflect back, I would always sit in a state of confusion with men. I would always go with the dominant man, and that I could go on a whole nother podcast about that. Why that? Because of there's an old saying, a girl always marries a man like a father. So you sort of like pick up those patterns. And I've always gone for that. And of course, those dominant men are always exciting, and they're thrilling, but it's not good. And then I would find it's
Not
really not.
helping.
And then the other hand, I would I would then try and go for the totally opposite of it, which I would just not find. I've had to self to bring myself into balance to think,
You wouldn't
yeah, what do I actually need in a man? I want a
you
bit of
wouldn't
this and a
feel
bit of
that
that.
fire in the
Pardon?
relationship. You wouldn't feel anything.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I've learned it's actually made me really, really reflect what I personally wanted in a relationship and in a man, because it was like it wasn't that and it wasn't that. After many years of discovering it wasn't one type, and it's sort of like it's really made me think that that's like, well, yeah, I want a man that's got a little bit of fire, but it's also got that bit of emotional, not empathicness, yeah, definitely empathy in him, not necessarily, yeah, empathy, and try to find a man that's sort of, yeah, it's got a little bit of fire, but it's also empathy, like empathic as well. It's sort of, yeah, it's taught me quite a lot. It taught me to also step back. It really taught me to step back and think, don't get in that and don't get in that. Just step back and really reflect and watch and see what you really want, what is really going on with men. What is it? It's taught me a big lesson, Dave. Big lesson.
And Joanna, have you found men that are dominant and also empathetic?
Yeah, a very few, very few. But
Are
what
they
I've
usually are they usually available, or like emotionally available?
um if they're dominant, no, because they've always got stuff going on. This would be one of my patterns as well, which I learned, that I would, any relationships I was getting into, I was attracting men that needed fixing, they needed help. And that's what I found the relationship was evolving like that. It was like they'd walk into my life and I'd have to sort of get them through this journey and off they would go again.
I
So
just
now you
noticed that about myself, that I've been doing the same thing, that I've been
really,
in many relationships where I've had to play coach's role. And
yeah,
even though I really love, these beautiful women, it's like, is that my job in the relationship, to be the coach, to be the mentor? Or can I just be me? And we were going to talk about this actually tonight on our mastermind call. We've got this really cool guy from Portugal. His name's Diogo, and he's a dating coach for guys, and he is really into consciousness. So we were going to talk
Mhm.
about how can you meet a woman, or in your case, a man that will support you, but will also compliment you.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? How do you meet someone that will support you and also compliment you based off of your purpose and your emotions in life?
I think you have to recognize, you start to sort of have to filter out. You actually have to learn to say the word no as well. I have to say that it's really important. I'm sort of saying that to you as a fellow coach because, I've taken quite, especially this last year, I've taken quite a bit of time out and I've really stepped back from being in relationships or anything and actually looked at this pattern that was really evolving. And yeah, you have to say no, and you have to you need to be clear in your mind of what you want, of what you're looking for, because if you haven't got clarity and you like want someone that's a bit like this and a bit like this and a bit like this and a bit like this, that's exactly what you're going to get. So you need that clarity in your mind of, right, I want a person that's maybe got this trait, this trait, this trait, and then this trait and this trait and this trait, and sort of, I suppose, you're going to laugh at this now, Dave. I've got a new tactic with dating.
I'm really interested.
And it's like, it's staying power. So I have actually, rather than pretending to like maybe be sort of like this strong, fiery woman, I've brought in a bit of balance. So if I'm talking to someone, it's almost like they're having a rigorous interview over a couple of months and they haven't got a clue. But I'm testing their staying power. I'm testing they can cope with me if I feel a bit emotional. I'm testing, to sort of see if they can be like that, themselves. So I'm checking all these things out to see and like trying to read a person before I even go on a date with them, for example.
Women do this actually more subconsciously than men. Men just say, "Yeah, she's hot, let's fuck." When the girl, when the guy walks up to her, she immediately is starting to, in the seduction world, they call it like a shit test. Okay, where the girl is testing to see how full of shit this guy is. and and you know in other words, like in more eloquent terms, we could just call it qualification. So that's like a business term as well. If you want to be in a business relationship with a client, you want to qualify them before they get on a call with you to make sure
Yeah,
there might be some synergy so that you guys could possibly work together. If you're talking to a girl on Tinder, or you go up and you meet some beautiful person in real life, you want to ask them certain questions and get a certain vibe to qualify to see whether it'd be worth your time to go on a date with them, to meet up
yeah,
with them, to get physical with them. And if you're not actually doing any sort of qualification, well, then that's where you get misled, and later on things come up and you're like, "Oh, but I thought they were this way." Well, you didn't actually put them in a hard situation and see how they would respond.
yeah. Yeah, and it's funny. Sometimes it's not even hard situations. It's just like, I think if someone can ride along with how I might be feeling one day to another day, because obviously women can be emotional and up and down, but then so can men. I think men again are a bit misunderstood like that. Men still have hormones like women do. I do a lot of moon work as well, and I really, that really affects the moods and the cycle of the month and everything.
Oh yeah,
So,
that's something that, like, you hear about it, but then when a guy gets into a relationship with a girl and they start living together, it's like the cycle, it actually really contributes into the
yeah,
relationship. Never talked to anyone about this before. Like, this is the first
haven't you?
in my life that I've ever talked to someone other than like a girlfriend about this. And it's like, as men, are we taught or trained? I've never ever heard of any training in any dating, relationship, seduction, self-love, you know, any field like that, of how a man is supposed to respond when his woman is on her period.
Yeah. That's a really good one.
You know, that could be a whole mini course that you could do,
Yeah,
where
that's a
you
good
could just
one.
teach guys like how should they respond when you know you're going
Yeah.
through your cycle, and like, and how can they be there for you, but also just know that you're gonna be like a little bit moody or whatever. Part of the process.
Oh, do you know, I think there's a whole nother course there in like literally working with the moon cycles to like where your new moon, full moon, all these, because you go through those cycles of the month and that all makes a massive difference as well. You know, it was like when I started sort of rejigging my work around and everything, I actually looked at the moon cycles and I was like, right, you're not doing it that week. You need to wait 2 more weeks till you get to full moon week, and then you can promote that. And it's sort of, I'm like reading all of that season, the seasonal work, the moon work, everything, that it's like, yeah, don't start that then, start that now. Take it easy that week. You know, you're in full power mode the next 2 weeks. It's
Where are we right now in terms of the moon cycle? So it's
right now we have just gone, we've just gone through a full moon. This is a fantastic moon this month as well. I'm working with Celtic Iberian calendar, and it's Hare, Firefly, and Seed moon, and it is the perfect time for new beginnings. You plant them seeds, and they thrive right now.
I just, you know, I actually ended or just split up, you know, from my last relationship, and it's really tough. But yeah, got a new computer on the way. I've been in a new city, you know, meeting new people, and it feels like a new beginning, to be honest, because
Yeah,
for me,
perfect time.
I was, you know, like really at the hip with someone for like a year during the pandemic. And I also get this sense that we're starting to come out of
Hmm.
the pandemic that we were so bogged down into.
Yeah,
And coming into this summer, more people will get vaccinated slowly, and things might start to open up a little bit more, and just opportunity to start to flow and to fly,
yeah,
and be free again.
yeah, yeah. And it's the perfect start. We've had spring equinox as well, haven't we? And it's the 1st of April today, actually, isn't it? Yeah, the 1st of April. This is where everything just blooms and thrives, and I love this time of year. Love it.
Yeah. Oh, I think the police are at the door. Oh, wait. April Fools.
Do you know what, Dave?
Just
Dave.
thought I would throw one in there
Oh,
because
for
I haven't done
goodness
that
sake.
one today.
Yeah, but do you realise the joke's on you because it's gone past midday?
Oh, are you not supposed to do it
No.
after 12 noon?
Yeah,
Really? You
yeah.
got to do it in the morning?
Apparently so, you have to do it before 12 o'clock.
I think all this superstition stuff, before I do it, I'm gonna have to run it by you to make sure that I'm like playing by the rules from now on.
Yeah, that's
So out of touch. Joanna, it's been great. I'm trying to keep these podcasts a little bit shorter.
yeah.
So my final question to you today is, how do you want to evolve your business and relationships over the next 12 months?
I really want to reach out to as many men as I possibly can to help them, because I think with every man I can help or guide to make a little bit more balanced, there's going to be a much more harmonious relationship going on as a result of that, and a much more harmonious man in themselves.
And what about your relationships?
For me,
Yeah. How do you want to evolve your life over the next year?
I'd like to. I started dating someone very recently, and who has been through a very rigorous test. And yeah, I just want to take things slow. I want to take things steady, and I want to really read the situations to know that everything's flowing just as it should do.
I love that.
I'm a great believer in trusting the universe.
Yeah, taking things slow, trusting your intuition, trusting the universe that it will guide you, and hope
Yeah,
this relationship works out better than expected.
yeah, yeah. That's another thing I think to as well instill in men is about intuition and trusting their intuition, because I don't think men feel into that intuition quite the same way that a woman does. And I think that'd be really exciting.
Beautiful. Well, Joanna, it's been really fun. So if any guy was listening to this and wanted to reach out, where would they find you? Where's the best place?
Facebook, definitely on Facebook.
Okay. Joanna Baker on Facebook. Do you have a group yet on Facebook?
I'm also Joanna Transform and Evolve, and I have got a men's group which is Transformational Self-Care for Men.
Amazing. Amazing. And you guys know where to find me. Dave Gold Evolve on Facebook. It's been a pleasure, Joanna. Thank you so much for your time.
It's been great, Dave. Thank you so much.
Possibly hosting you on the Mastermind one day.
Yeah, great.
Awesome.
It'd be great.
Awesome. All right, guys. See you in the next episode. Peace.